Let's get started. All right, episode 2, the interim name, the R&B Real Estate Show. I'm Andrew Roach Family Real Estate Team, based out of Milton, Ontario, and my co-host here.
I'm Ross Bridges, Ross Bridges Real Estate Team. We're located in the Oakville, Burlington market, a little bit south of Andrew.
Yeah, awesome. Both in Halton region, both with many years of experience. Both decided to similar work ethic, etc. Decided to start doing some shows together as we were chatting on the phone and throwing ideas back and forth. And we just said, hey, let's do this. So here we are, episode 2. First episode was fun, a lot of back and forth. Covered a lot of topics, high level, and I think today we decided after debriefing our last show, we wanted to dig into one of the topics a little bit deeper, because we think it's important given the market conditions that we're in right now, and a lot of questions that are bouncing around from the public as people are trying to understand and navigate this market. So we decided to get into, why is this real estate market like this? Why is it crazy bananas? Why are things going up, 3% a month or 5% a month, right? Stats came out today. Neither of us had a chance. We had busy schedules to dig into the stats, but we're expecting them to be very strong month over month. So we'll get into that in a later episode as to what those are. But ultimately, I think everybody understands, everybody is seeing the real estate market going up. Everybody knows what's happening, right? It's a crazy real estate market, right? It's certainly a seller's market. So we wanted to get into some of the reasons why this is happening. Why is it like this? You have some theories? I got mine. What are yours?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, just when I've been going out a few times to the stores recently, talking to some of my local vendors, they're always asking me right now, like, the market's crazy. It's just gone bonkers, like you said, bananas. So it's why is the market the way it is? There's so many different reasons. I think and we've touched on many of them. Low interest rates. We've got a massive target audience right now of millennials. A lot of people moving out of the city centers. A lot of people that are based down in Toronto in towers, in condos that are wanting more space. We've all been, captured over this last little time where we just haven't had enough of our own space, right? A lot of smaller families that maybe, could you imagine right now a family of 3, 4, 5 people in a condo that's only 1,000 square feet, where they're used to having the opportunity to go outside a lot more, and they're feeling more like sardines more than ever.
Yeah.
So it's tough. So going west, Andrew.
Going
right?
west, and it's
going west.
I mean, we're seeing the West. I mean, it's not even necessarily, right? It says it's everywhere, right?
We're west of where we are too, right? A lot further west.
Well, yeah, good point. Absolutely. So, and then low supply. I mean, it might be one of those other things, which, you might get into that as far as like, the COVID is going to be a factor giving low supply as well as people wanting to move, but not being able to. So you touched on interest rates, immigration. No, you didn't touch about immigration. We'll talk about immigration as well. Millennials, Toronto exodus, and then we're low supply, and then immigration being one of those factors. So let's get into each one of those headlines a little bit, right? So let's talk about interest rates. I was talking to my mortgage broker last night, I think it was. They're doing 5-year fixed at 1.5%.
Unheard of.
Is that crazy? Like that is if that's not free money, it's damn near close, right? If the target inflation is 2% and they're getting close to it, and interest rates are less than inflation, as literally free money.
Well, I think about 10 years ago, like you'd be seeing 5-year fixed at 3.5%, 4.5%.
Right.
And we were saying it was free money then.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah. That's true.
So, and the fact is, let's be honest, interest rates probably aren't going to be going up anytime soon. We've always been directly related to the American market. We've always, right now, there's a lot of confusion with a lot of people think that prices are going to be going down, right? And
like real estate prices or interest rates?
Well, interest rate prices continuing to probably drop,
right?
Which is hard to believe. And
it is.
There's a lot of confusion out there with consumers thinking that, at some point, the markets are going to crash too.
Right.
And I think that's something that we can dig into a little bit deeper in this show or maybe another show. The economic situation of America, like we are always directly related to what's going on in as Canada, like whatever happens in the
Our
States.
economies are tied, right? They're extensively tied, right? So yeah, I mean, Americans, the American economy influences the Canadian economy for sure. But the Canadian government, I mean, we're printing money too, right? We hear about the Americans printing money, and that's true. They certainly are. But you know, we got stimulus package after stimulus package after stimulus package up here as well, and we're doing the same thing. We're printing money, right? We just don't hear about it as much because we're overshadowed by our big loud neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Right. It's tough to hear the nice soft classical music in your house when your next door neighbor is blasting rock music at the top of shaking the walls, so to speak.
Totally.
Right. So
another thing that we did touch on was obviously immigration, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, like what we've seen year in, year out is the downtown, core of Toronto has been driven by immigrants. A lot of those towers, over the last 10, 15 years, Toronto was one of the leaders in the world for condominium development.
Yeah.
And we went from basically 10 years ago to the 7th largest market in North America to now we're the third, and we've been the third for several years now, behind New York and Los Angeles. So the economy was booming in Toronto.
No, it can't be that. Can't be that because Mexico is the largest city in North America, right? I thought we were 7. We overshadowed Chicago a few years ago.
And Chicago.
Maybe more than a few years ago, but
I think I'm talking from an economic standpoint.
Oh, I apologize. I was thinking population. My bad. Okay, hit me again.
No. Yeah, not populous, not density. But if we look at going back to like the growth, and hopefully someone isn't going to call me out on stats for that for third, but I believe we are. If you look about the condos in Toronto, if you look about how many new immigrants were coming in and filling up all those investment properties, people were buying all these condos. And then you had a lot of the newcomers to come into the city that were filling up a lot of those cities, looking for opportunity, looking for growth, looking for that. And that was creating a tremendous amount of stimulus. So even though that's the one major negative that we're hearing about real estate is that there has been a saturation of condos, and maybe more from a rental standpoint than a sales standpoint.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that, where that's the one thing that's maybe holding up that major boom that you might think that maybe down the road we're gonna see how that might affect the markets in the coming years.
There was, and forgive me, I can't remember where I found this stat. I think it was in a real estate group that I was part of, where they did extensive statistical analysis over and over again. But basically the idea was there that new immigrants will move to a new country, and we'll look at Canada, obviously. So where the stats are Canadian based. So new immigrants will move to Canada. They will, look to find a job. So but they're not going to put down roots immediately, right? So they will statistically rent for 3 to 5 years before they will decide to buy something and settle in and put down some roots, right? Got to find a job. Got to find you find your tribe, right? The people that are like you, or who, whatever the case may be, whether that's from, their ethnic background or the industry that they live, that they're working in or driving towards, or, what's important to them, if they want to be into like a younger, more family-oriented community, or they wanted to be in like the busier, singles kind of high income community, like whatever. They find their tribe, they figure out where they want to, lay down roots, buy a house at that point, right? And so if you look at like 3 to 5 years, this was my theory, is that while we're seeing, a booming real estate market for various reasons, which we're obviously getting into now. But, in 3 to 5 years, we could potentially see a bit of a slowdown, because immigration has been stopped for almost a year now, right? We're coming on like 9 or 10 months here, right? now the Liberal government has said that when the doors open again, they're going to boost those numbers by like almost 2 times. It was like, I think they were looking at around 250,000 to 300,000 immigrants were coming in every year, and they're going to boost that to 500,000, right, per year to make up that loss. So maybe, that doesn't happen, but it's still an interesting, thing to consider, looking into the future to say, well, what are the causes? What are one of the causes of immigration being stopped for a year? And
you got to think that there's so many people that are in our country right now, like the immigrants that have been here for many, many years. Millennials, we've touched on millennials, and we'll dig deeper into that.
Yeah.
And people new to the country, when this does get lifted, they're probably not going to be overly concerned about the foreign tax as much, knowing that, within 4 years, you get your residency, you can get that money gifted back to you. So I think it'll have a lot to do with the education and the understanding of renting, down payment, establishing credit within our country that is holding things up. So a big part of the boom is there's so many different reasons why we're seeing such a huge boom.
Yeah. And to get into, the millennial element of it that you kind of touched on there, if you look at the oldest millennials, and again, whichever stat you read, because every time I look at what's the age of millennials is different for some reason. I think everybody agrees that the oldest millennials are in their mid to late 30s, and the youngest millennials are still in their early 20s, right? So if you look at that age group, that's prime real estate buying age, population or age group, whatever, right? The age demographics. On the high end, the early 30s, they've probably already bought a condo, and they've probably been living in a condo for a while. And at this point, they're starting a family, and they maybe even have some kids, and they're looking to get that low rise, type of lifestyle where you have a backyard and you can just, run in from school and dump your bags. And it's an easier lifestyle than being on the 27th floor of a condo tower, right? Nobody wants to raise a family up there. On the flip side, or on the other side, on the low end of that, you're in your early 20s, 20, 24, 25, whatever. That's the time where you're like, okay, I've got a job, right? I'm making some decent money. Time for me to maybe start, I've saved for a while. Maybe mom and dad gifted me my first down payment to get my foot in the door. I'm going to buy a small condo, whatever, right? Like, so they're in the house buying process already. And it's just as they move through. And again, going back to depending on what stats you read, you're looking at, 9.3 million Canadians are millennials, right? Yeah. All moving through that house buying. That's just demand that is already there, has been there for almost 10 years as millennials started to move in to the condo buying, the earliest ones. The guys that are early 30s now, or late 30s now, they were late 20s. They were in so we've been in this demand, this high demand for 10 years, just as our population naturally ages through that process, right? Add to that, all these other factors, right, which we will continue to get into. Next one that we were chatting about was, people moving out of Toronto, right?
Yeah.
And for various reasons, one of which we basically just talked about, people saying, okay, the older millennials not wanting to raise a family in a condo tower. So they say, I need something low rise. And can I afford a $1.5 million townhouse?
Well, all salmon like to swim back upstream when they're laying their eggs. You think about a lot of people that maybe grew up in Milton or Burlington and Oakville, and they've gone and they've lived the limelight in Toronto, and now they're ready to start a family, and they're going back to mom and dad and their roots, and they've got daycare included with the grandparents, and it just ties all back in together with. Yeah. And let's face it, a lot of people are obviously happy in the city. But we've all gone through a realization during COVID, and it comes down to where you're going to be happiest, healthiest, the best schools, the best environment for your children. You know, so many parents, all parents almost put their children's where their children are going to have the best quality of life first. And why wouldn't they, right? So when it comes down to more space, health, convenience, those are all major factors for having the best quality of life.
Yeah, for sure. Quality of life, for the family, like you said, schools, being able to walk to school. I mean, I guess you could, there's some of the best schools are in Toronto. So,
Yes.
not to say that you're coming out to the suburbs to get the best schools, but it's the overall, right? It's the traffic. And yeah, okay. So you might say, well, and this is the other point about, the exodus from Toronto is, with COVID, you don't necessarily need to, and being able to work from home, you don't need to have the house in the city. You don't need to pay Toronto taxes. You don't need to deal with, Toronto traffic to go and get your groceries or take your kids to jujitsu or, soccer or, music lessons, whatever, that shuffle all the time. You don't need to do that for the convenience of, okay, I don't have the commute to work, right? And in fairness, I mean, the commute to work, yeah, it can be 45 minutes. It can be an hour, right?
Well, I think to add to what you just said there's so many companies that having gone through this experiment, this social experiment, realizing that, productivity's up, my employees are happier. They get to keep an eye on their children doing their schooling, which I'm sure for a lot of parents, it's nice. I'm sure it's added stress that nobody wants, but it's the time and energy are our largest resources. So to know that a lot of people are going to be renegotiating, I'm only coming into work once or twice, or, there's going to be a lot of commercial buildings that are going to be potentially closing down in the next several years. And maybe those are more workspaces closer to home. So there's going to be many different life-changing things that are going to happen because of what we faced during this pandemic, that unbeknownst to us, right?
Yeah, that's a good comment that you made about this social experiment, because if you think about it, if you think back to, like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, you heard rumblings of companies trying to experiment with work from homes, right? I mean, I've got a handful of clients that are in the insurance industry, and they have worked from home for years. Mm-hmm. Because they're mobile, right? So they're what would you call them? Insurance assessors, maybe, right? So when there's a loss claim, they have to go out, right?
On site.
So point being is that they don't need to go into the office to then turn around and leave, right? So anyway, so for them, they would only have to go into the office, a few times a month, so to speak, or maybe it was once a week. I can't remember, but they're out all the time. So they were one of the first types of industries, maybe, or the people that I heard of anyways, that moved to a lot of work from home, a fair amount. Right. Mm-hmm. And you heard, a little rumblings of that happening more and more and more as internet the speeds became faster, things became more cloud driven. There was more opportunity for online work environments, where large companies were saying, well, listen, I wonder if I can reduce the leasing costs and the hydro costs and the heating costs, et cetera, on all of our massive buildings that we need to house our employees. Can we reduce that by 10%? By having a bunch of our employees work from home? Like, we were hearing about that. Now you have COVID come along that forces them into that, whether it's kicking or screaming or openly welcomed. And hey, lo and behold, it works, right? For the most part. I mean, there are some things where you need people to go into the office and be face to face on some things, some industries, right? I mean, you're not fixing a hydro pool from home over the internet, but a lot of the stuff, you can work from home. Right?
Well, I heard that households were saving upwards of 22%.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then you touch on how much companies must be saving. You know, just the thought of what they're spending on rent, if they're having to cut down on floors of buildings, you know, the cost right there. It's also much greener, you know, with everything that we've had to face with global warming, and it's been a pretty lovely winter. You know, we're seeing that that's going to be a choice too. And yeah, we can all agree Zoom, that's what we're on right now. Zoom has been one of the major winners of this pandemic as well too. So
yeah, for sure.
You know, platforms where you can communicate through work, whether it's through Google or whatever. So, you know, if employees are saving money, we haven't even talked about daycare, but that would obviously account for 22% of the house savings. If companies are saving money, we're putting less CO2 into the planet. You know, we're being more efficient with our time. You know, so a few good things have come from this. Going back to our major topic of, you know, why are things so crazy? There's also not a lot going on right now, right? So we touched on this in our previous show. I still have a bone to pick with you, by the way, about buying first or selling first.
Yeah,
but I think that could be a good topic for our next episode. Is the fact is that, you know, people have they have time on their hands right now, and they've been a little stir crazy, and they probably want more space.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. That's a big request, for our clients right now, or from our clients. I apologize. Right. And it's you know, well, certainly more space for sure. Like that's like the broad element of it, but it's a home office, right? Because, you know, some people are, because they don't have the extra bedroom, or they don't have the space in the basement, or whatever the case may be, they're trying to work from the living room, right? Or the dining room table or something like that. Right. And there's no way to close the door.
Andrew, and during this period that we've gone through, dare we dream of having more acreage, you know,
every day,
beautiful, great room, that gorgeous pool in your backyard
every day.
Like there are so many people out there that are planning their retirement, that are preparing for their families, their dream homes, or just moving from a condo into a nice townhouse.
Yes.
So, you know, we've all got time.
Or just, to that point, just having a basement.
Yes.
Right. Just, can I have a basement? Like, just, that's all. That's it. That's all I want. You don't have to dream big. Just like, I just want a little bit more space, a place to like have the rec room in the basement. Right. Yeah. Just so it's not in the living room, which is the only real room, the only real common room. Right. And, or, you know, maybe you're in a 3-story townhouse. Mm-hmm. Right. And so again, you want a basement, you want a place, you know, an extra space in the basement that you can, like, you know, have as the rec room, and have the TV room or whatever. Right. There's lots of things. Or
and another thing for you guys out there that are planning, like this goes out to you millennials, or, you know, first time buyers, just in general, right? New to the country. Andrew and I, we can also help you with planning for new builds. There's a lot of great opportunities for new builds as well too. So if you're in a position where you have a little bit of a money for deposit, and you know that you don't have to worry about a mortgage for another year or so, then it's an amazing opportunity to be buying something that you're going to be moving into in a year or 18 months from now. And honestly, you know, one of the best things is when you book that vacation, you know you're going away. Well, if you want, you know, the Roach family in Milton, Ross Bridges real estate team, we can help you in Oakville, Burlington. Moving west, if you want to even move further west, there's great opportunity for new builds as well too. So setting yourself up for the future that way too.
Absolutely. There's a ton of opportunity, ton of different and awesome communities all around, you know, the West GTA, going a little bit further as well. I mean, it's booming out there. It's booming everywhere, right? It's crazy. And my brain almost wanted to take me off on another tangent here, but I'll do my best to stay focused.
Oh, come on, go for it. It. You've been so good this show.
Don't tempt me. Okay, I will. I promise. Let's stick on topic here so that we stick on why is the real estate market going crazy. Okay, so far we talked about the interest rates are crazy low. So money is basically free, and it makes affordability that much higher, right? We talk about, like, when your mortgage payment comes out, what portion of that mortgage payment it goes to interest, and what percentage goes to principal, right? When you have a 25-year amortization, or you have a 30-year amortization, your principal element is basically fixed, right? You're dividing that sum by 25 or 30 years, right? That's fixed. The interest rate is what kind of fluctuates, right? So if interest rates are higher, you have a higher payment because your interest portion is going to be higher, right? Interest rates are crazy low right now. So your interest portion is really low, which means that, if you could normally afford, I'm just going to make this up, if you can afford $3,000 a month, right, then you can buy a bigger house when little of that goes to interest, right? If again, you still have that $3,000 a month, but 1,000 of that is going towards interest, that means only 2,000 is going towards principal versus say 2,800 going towards principal, right? So that kind of like makes that affordability that much higher. So interest rates being crazy low, immigrants are still here, right? So we're right now, the buyer pool that we're dealing with right now, even though the borders are closed, we're looking at immigrants that showed up, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago that are now saying, okay, I'm not going to rent anymore. I put down my roots. I'm going to go and buy a house, right? So the buyer pool that we're dealing with today is 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, right? They're now moving into to the home ownership, right? Talked about millennials, just that natural cycle of, again, whatever stats you read, 9.4 million millennials all moving through the real estate buying process, right? That buyer pool moving through naturally. Again, that supply or that demand, I apologize, has already been here. It's already been here for 10 years, right? We're still just moving through. We're still just getting through that, right? The Toronto exodus, right? So again, people saying either, again, aging up and saying, okay, I'm done with the condo tower. I'm going to go look for something low rise, and maybe they can't afford Toronto. So they're looking for something a little bit more affordable on the outskirts, right? Moving west. Or people saying, okay, I don't want to be in the COVID environment. Like I don't want the high densely populated area of Toronto. So I want something that has got a lower population density. Again, saying, well, let's move out to the suburbs. Couple that with, I don't need to have to pay for these these prices. I can work from home. So, I don't, the convenience of being able to work from home, again, let's just move out to something with a quieter community, right?
And I think another thing that we need to look at here too is, the infrastructure of transportation is going to change a lot over the next 5 to 10 years. One of the major advantages of that QEW corridor is there will eventually be more speed trains. There's going to be an infrastructure going to other areas in Ontario that are going to bring people back into the core, back into the city. You look at the expansion of the 401, like basically what that's caused up, it's opened up a lot for Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo. Yeah. You've seen the expansion in Milton. So the fact that the infrastructure of traffic and commuting is making things a lot easier for people to get. I mean, yes, there's going to be an abundance of more traffic, and it's been lighter traffic with COVID for sure. Yeah. But knowing that there is that infrastructure long-term that will get traffic from A to B. If people could be living out in Chatham, Kent, London, and they know that they could get to downtown Toronto in an hour on a train, well, that's pretty cool, right?
Well, that's 100%. Like that's a very, very, very valid point, because we've been seeing that, high-speed rail aside for a moment, which we don't have yet, but there's a lot of talk of that coming. That aside, I mean, we've been seeing that with, to your point about the expansion of highways, right? So whether it's a widening of highway, which allows a faster flow of traffic, or new highways going in, right? So 407 when it came in, 407 when it expanded multiple times, they just finished opening it up all the way to the 115. The 410 going north as they expanded that, right? That opens up all these markets that instead of it used to take an hour 15, now it takes you 45 minutes.
Totally, right? And also, when I was talking about the QE corridor, what I also meant to mention too was the GO train expansion, right? Yeah. The GO train expansion's also increased. So whether you're further up in Milton, you've obviously got 401, and that's leading everywhere.
Which by the way, the next phase of expansion is taking that 8 or 10 lane highway all the way out to Milton, right? So they brought that through Mississauga. The next phase is bringing it out to Milton, which is coming.
Excellent. So, I mean, it's nice to see that the infrastructure is going to be there. Speed trains, that's going to be pretty cool. I would recommend anyone go online and you can look at that as well too. Going back to what we were talking about with looking at the millennials, looking at a lot of immigrants, that have been here for several years right now. Things you got to be aware of too are obviously the stress tests, making sure that you have had the opportunity to have a plan, right?
You gotta elaborate on the stress test there for those that don't know what the stress tests are.
So thank you. So stress test, making sure depending on, and we touched on it last episode, but please don't be afraid to jump in here, Andrew. But if we're talking about your earnings, obviously what your debt ratio is, looking at if there's going to be you and someone else on title, your credit rating, right? And then, if a parents are in a situation, you can put them on title. That is a very, very powerful way to get a higher pre-approval if your parents are cool with actually going on title. Down payment, right? So a big part of the equation is down payment. So by meeting with a preferred mortgage specialist, they're going to assist you to make sure that you have a good understanding of what you can afford, right? So can you maybe illustrate that a little bit further than what I said?
Yeah, so I'll take it one step further. So that would be basically your pre-approval for sure. The stress test element of it is, we talked about interest rates being silly low right now. So it's not qualifying at 1.5%, right? So when you're playing, again, this is why it's very important to be able to or to go and speak with a qualified mortgage broker or mortgage specialist, right? That understands how to do this, because the online calculators, when you play with those online, great tools, it's great to have extra information, but they don't tell you the whole story. So if you put in there, my interest rate is 1.5%, yeah, that'll be what your mortgage payment is, but that doesn't necessarily mean what you can qualify for, because you have to qualify. And any mortgage broker that's listening to me right now is going to just be grinding their teeth and shaking their fist, because I'm totally going to butcher this. But
you and me both, brother.
But I think it's either 2% higher than your posted rate, or within the 2% higher than the contract rate. I apologize. So instead of 1.5%, it would be 3.5%, or within a certain amount of I think it was 2% higher than the contract rate or the posted rate, whichever one is higher. And I should have looked this up ahead of time, but I didn't realize we're going to go down this road. But anyways, the point is the same. The stress test is to say, if interest rates went up to 5%, can I still qualify? Right? Interest rates are 1.5%, but if they skyrocket, or just say skyrocket, but if they go back up to, even what's below historical averages, right, at 4.5%, 5%, can you still make your payments, right? And that's sometimes if you will go down the road and you say, okay, I'm going to go and buy a house because my mortgage payment, I can afford that. That fits within my ratio. And you don't get pre-approved, and you go out and you buy a house firm, right? Because you're like, no problem. And it turns out that you don't qualify because you don't fall within the stress test. That's going to be a dark day, a dark few months, maybe a few years.
And one of the other things that the bank looks at is actually what you do for a living. So if you are self-employed, if you're a contractor, then, it's going to be a lot. They're not as lenient with you as if you have, say, a government job, if you're working for a financial institution. So just take all those things into consideration. And that's why, we want people to get. And another thing here too, guys, that's really important to know is you can lock those rates in. Most places will lock them in for 120 days. I hear others 90, but you can lock those rates in for the next 3-4 months. So that's, you can do that now and you're good to go. Just so you know, versus having to wait. We don't anticipate rates going up, but just so that you're aware and you're prepared.
Yeah. And furthermore, just on that note, as you kind of reminded me, when you're dealing with a new build, right? Certain banks will, once you're approved, once you're qualified and approved for that house, it could be not ready for 2 years. And the market crashes, you lose your job, you got illness, whatever the case may be, and you no longer qualify, you'll still get the house. You were qualified once, and once you've qualified, you're done. Once you're approved, you're done for however long it takes, right? So make sure that you go ahead and you get, go through the proper channels and make sure that everything is done properly beforehand.
And just to go on that point for 1 second. So say you're still lucky enough that you have the comfort of living from home, but you want an exit strategy for getting out of the house, and you do buy that new build. Well, you're buying it today. Let's just say you're buying that 1-bedroom condo, wherever the heck it is, and it's listed for $399. Just to give you a number. And by the time you move in, giving you a very fair market, let's just say hypothetically speaking, they go up on average 8% over the next couple of years. Well, you've done very well for yourself, within a 2-year span, just to buy the place at that market value.
For sure. What do you think about wrapping back around to the topic at hand?
Buying first or selling first?
No. That's going to be a whole show on itself. No. So, why real estate market is going crazy like this? I think next one on the list here, low supply, right?
Yes.
Why are we seeing low supply?
Yeah, and I think one of the major reasons. Okay, so condos, depending on where you are, we're seeing a little bit more inventory. I have noticed more competition in condos recently.
Yeah, up here for sure. There was a property that sold last night. I assume it sold. We showed it, so we were getting the updates on it. It had 16 offers on it.
There you go.
16 offers on a condo. And I was going to talk about doing a separate show on condos being a good investment right now.
Yeah.
Because the condo market is soft, because new immigrants aren't coming in to fill those spaces. But COVID is going to, hopefully be short-lived, and so are the borders being closed going to be short-lived. And when those open back up again, and we're getting 500,000 plus new immigrants a year, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, like they always do, and they're going to rent a condo because that's what they can afford, right?
Yeah.
So I think that condos would be a good space. Anyways, that aside, I totally hijacked that, but yeah. So generally soft right now. The condo market.
For sure. And then we could talk about any city right now. We could list off every city in the GTA and further out, all the way to Niagara Falls. Almost everything is selling in crazy competition. I'm hearing, like we talked about last show, 40, 50 plus offers, right? Yeah. So you're telling me I got a chance. I think that the reality comes in. We touched on bully offers last episode. It's getting in early and often. It's why, Andrew? Why? I mean, I think we've talked about it the whole show, but why are we seeing such low supply right now? It's early in the year. People are waiting for the spring market.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's certainly that. We've had, a couple handfuls of clients that we've chatted with about selling their house, and everybody, and this isn't just this year. This is just historical, right? This is just the mentality of sellers is I sell in the spring, right? Because the prices go up in the spring, there's demand in the spring. And it's true.
This is early spring market we're in right now. Early spring.
But I mean, we're always seeing that. Like for the last 5, 6, 7 years, January, it's the early spring market. And there's the old adage too, right? Like if you're staying in the same market, or relatively the same market anyways, they're all going to move up together. So yeah, you're going to sell high, but you're going to buy high. Right. I would say don't get too stuck on trying to wait around to the spring market so that you get the most out of your house, because you're going to get the most out of your house, but so is the guy you're going to buy from going to get the most out of their house.
Or right? A lot of people are waiting for that right home, right? So
that's it too. So that goes to the second point that I was going to make about, where am I going to go? I want to move, right? We talked about this, and everybody wants a pool, extra space, right? They want a finished basement. They want a home office. Everybody's looking for that right now, right?
Absolutely.
You got it. Cha-ching.
Yeah.
But so they're like, okay, once I find it, I'll move. I'll sell my house once I find it. But they're not going to be homeless, right? So supply is kind of it's there, it's ready, it's just waiting. And then you get the other people that are afraid of COVID, right? Don't want people walking through my house, which is a fair and valid point, and quite a concern, I should say, right? And we could talk about what we're doing in the COVID market to help our buyers and protect our sellers, right? But that is leading to low supply, right? We saw it in 2017 too, right? We just needed supply to come on the market because there was so much demand, and there just wasn't. And then as people started to find stuff, all of a sudden, all the supply came on until April. There was twice as much supply coming on the market as was going off the market.
Well, even last night, I was talking to a client. I'd been talking to her for a couple of years, and she had planned to buy in Burlington. And now that the reality is that she came to it, and again, it comes down to friends, community. Yep. She's now decided to go out to Windsor.
Oh, nice.
Better value, so instead of, obviously she's seeing the prices and everything, and it's stressful, and it comes down to like, where do you want to be? Going to do a plug right now. I'm fortunate enough to have founded during COVID, about a year ago, I started a relocation company called Top Realtors Canada. It's designed for some of the best realtors across Canada. So if anybody is planning on doing a relocation to, outside of Milton, Burlington, Oakville, the surrounding area where Andrew or myself can't help you, then I'd love to put you in contact with some amazing realtors. If you're deciding you want to move out east or out west or up north, right? So many people are wanting cottage country. That's a show in itself, of people moving up to Barrie, up to the Muskokas, totally. Getting out of the city center. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's you touched on that. That's a whole other kind of like market, and again, a whole other conversation in and of itself. Is like number one, the vacation properties, right? Because people couldn't travel, so everyone wanted a cottage. But number two, going back to being able to work remotely. Imagine being able to work from the cottage. Imagine being able to move up to the Muskokas or Kawarthas or wherever you want to go.
Heaven.
And being able to just, work from home. And again, maybe because you don't have to drive anywhere, you can close the door, you can work from home, you can be ultra efficient. Maybe you don't have to work, 6 hours a day. Maybe you're in a position in your boss or your work schedule is like, as long as you get your work done, I don't care how long it takes you, or how long it takes you. Right?
Or you buy a cottage in Long Point and it's only an hour away.
Long Point?
Long Point. So we're more towards St. Catharines. Right.
Okay. So, okay. Down on, it's Lake Ontario. I was not Erie or
like Erie. I think it's Erie, but it could be Ontario. But anyway, the point is, it's only an hour away from the city center. So I think it's off Highway 25. I was there like maybe 15 years ago, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and it was much cheaper too.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that's the idea, right? If you don't have to be local, then and you can work from the cottage or work from wherever. That would be amazing. That'd be amazing. I'm looking it up right now. I got to find out what a Long Point is. The hamlet. Is this the right place? No, of course. Got to zoom in here. Yeah, it's on Erie. It's down just past Port Dover, Turkey Point. So I've gone to Turkey Point a bunch of times.
Honestly, a nice place to take the family for a nice day at the beach. I highly recommend it. So
yeah, cool, man. But yeah, for sure. All that stuff, right? So again, wrapping back around again to the whole low supply, right? That's what we're seeing. So if you look at the first, few points, you look at low interest rates saying it's easy to buy. You look at immigrants that have been here for a number of years that are now moving into the home buying from renting stage. You look at the natural pipeline of millennials moving through. You look at people moving out of Toronto, saying, I don't need to spend the time. I don't have to spend the extra premium, driving around town, the congestion, or I want to get out of the congestion first for COVID. Couple that demand with the lack of supply. Yeah. That's the imbalance that we're seeing right now, right? That's driving. Listen, it doesn't matter what the commodity is. If you got 25 people that want it and there's only one, right? That's economics 101, supply and demand.
There will only be one winner, other than the seller. Other than the seller.
That's right. That's why, companies that make stuff, they make limited editions, because it's like, hey, there's only a certain number of these, and I know that people are going to want them. They're worth more. Right?
And for those of you out there that think that this might slow down, guess what? It's not going to. It will be a heated.
Not anytime soon, anyways.
Not anytime soon. No.
And if it does slow down, we got to look at what's the time frame, right? What's the spectrum that we're looking on, right? If there's another like 2017 pullback, a 10% pullback. I was going to say,
isn't a government announcement going to do any form of cooling on the market? It wouldn't have the same effect this time around.
I think that there was enough supply coming on the market in April that there was more to it than just the government announcement, because the government announcement didn't affect like you and me buying a house. It had no relevance in 2017 to me saying, I'm going to sell my condominium and I'm going to go buy a townhouse.
But for all of those foreign investors, there was a tremendous amount of people coming from the Middle East, coming from China, coming from other parts of the world. And all of a sudden that major, that was completely slowed down. So yeah, for people that had been here generations, or even, first generation, second generation, they've been here long enough. There was a great opportunity there where things had slowed down for a little bit, right? We saw a correction, and we did see a correction a year ago. We saw a correction back in, it was March of 2020, when we were all scared during the start of COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody pulled back. Right. Again. And that goes back to, supply demand, right? So the demand went away. Supply was still there. Houses were still on the market. Mm-hmm. But demand went away, even temporarily, even if it was, because they're like, hang on a second, how bad is this going to be? I don't want to go outside. I don't want to get sick. Right. And even if it was like unintentional, right? You look at like the seasonality of the Christmas season, right? Every Christmas, it's not that people don't need to move. It's not that people don't need a house. It's just that mentally their minds are somewhere else during that time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Investors or people that do not celebrate Christmas. I mean, a lot of people, savvy investors, will say, yeah, like, and I tell my clients, you want to start looking, you're looking for a deal, you're looking for a sale. Great time to start, middle of November, right. Right up until maybe that second week of January. But there's a lot of people that start early activity right at the beginning of the year. And we've seen it last year. I remember it was early January, and things were crazy. Right. Things were so crazy right at the beginning of last year and then it was the COVID storm that just kind of shut everything down.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Last year would have been a bonkers year, the way it started.
Absolutely.
Right. And then COVID came, and it was like, and then it was, hang on a second. Right. But yeah, the demand was there. The demand was there for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So synopsis of the show, the synopsis, is that the right word? The wrapping things up, the whole idea about the show. The big answer that we're looking for as to why the market's crazy like this: supply demand imbalance, right? We're seeing all the reasons why the demand is there, and we're seeing the reasons why the supply is not there. Right. But we'll follow the stats, right? New stats came out today. We'll both have a peek, dig into that really, really deeply, because it's more than just looking at a number, and bring you some of that information, hopefully on the next show, even if it's just kind of a bit of a high level, little market snapshot kind of thing. But we've touched on a lot of things even just today for future topics that we can get into. First of which is going to be whether to buy first or sell first.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you, the audience, for following Andrew Roach and family business up in Milton, and myself.
You just totally butchered that, man. He's totally butchered that.
I'm sorry.
It's the Roach Family Real Estate Team. The Roach Family Real Estate Team.
I am so sorry. The Roach Family Real Estate Team. We'll say that as many times as we can. And
you're not the first one. You won't be the last.
In the Oakville, Burlington area as well too. So,
say that again. I was talking over you. The Ross Bridges Real Estate Team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're both here to help you. And if you have any questions, find us online. We look forward to our next show.